One of the common criticisms directed towards WWE is that they fail to listen to the audience. WWE prefers to push and present superstars that they believe the fans should like, rather than those superstars that fans are clamoring to see more of. While this is true to an extent, over the years there have been a number of occasions where WWE have acted on behalf of the fans and given them exactly what they wanted. But which times were they? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 times WWE actually gave the fans exactly what they wanted. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 10. CM Punk beats John Cena. The summer of 2011 in WWE predominantly revolved around CM Punk. They ran a storyline which blurred the lines between fiction and reality, as Punk was set to leave the WWE, but they were doing everything in their power to get him to stay. This storyline began when Punk cut the infamous pipe bomb promo at the top of the Raw stage, and the reaction was like nothing WWE had seen in years. Punk was receiving mainstream attention and had become the biggest star in the company virtually overnight. Punk was then set to face John Cena for the WWE title at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, which also happened to be in Chicago. Due to his contract expiring, Punk agreed to a 2-day contract extension to appear at the pay-per-view, and this led fans to believe that Punk had no chance of winning the match. Punk in the storyline would begin to state that once he beats Cena and wins the title, he's leaving the WWE with the title forever. This was a compelling angle which pulled a ton of viewers back that hadn't watched WWE's programming in over a decade. Now the pressure was on for WWE to follow the demand of fans and potentially get a lot of lapsed fans back long term, and amazingly, they actually pulled the trigger. WWE booked Punk to beat Cena and leave WWE with the title. Now, although this departure only lasted 2 weeks as Punk re-signed the week of the pay-per-view, it was great to see the WWE delivering an angle of this nature and following through to a satisfying conclusion. Number 9. WWE brings back Matt Hardy. 2005 was a turbulent year for Matt Hardy as he found out that his girlfriend at the time, Lita, was having a real-life affair with his friend and fellow WWE star, Edge. Hardy naturally didn't take this news well, and he would take to social media to badmouth the two, and this was something that WWE felt was highly inappropriate. They then made the drastic decision to outright fire Matt Hardy, and fans were quick to come to his honor, citing how unfairly he had been treated by Lita, Edge, and now WWE. Fans began to hijack all of Edge and Lita's segments on television, and an internet petition to get Hardy rehired had over 15,000 signatures. WWE eventually gave in and decided to bring him back. Now, their idea was to bring back Hardy to work with Edge and Lita in a storyline which would use the real-life affair as a catalyst. Although it could be argued that WWE used Hardy rather poorly once he returned, it was still encouraging to see that they realized the error of their ways with the premature firing of the former tag team champion. Number 8. The Women's Revolution. Following the major success of the women's division in NXT, fans wanted the same style of women's wrestling to be implemented on the main roster. Fans were sick of the 2-minute matches on television, and so was born the #GiveDivas movement. This social media movement took off and received major attention from key people in WWE such as Vince and Stephanie McMahon. Now, it took some time for WWE to implement these changes, but by the summer of 2015, 3 out of the 4 members of the 4 Horsewomen were on the main roster. This completely altered how women were perceived on the roster. They began to have extended matches and actual compelling storylines. In 2016, WWE would ditch the phrase Divas and scrap the Divas title in favor of the brand new women's title. The movement would quickly turn into the Women's Revolution, and it would see women main event pay-per-views have their own exclusive pay-per-view known as Evolution, have a women's tag title, and even main event WrestleMania. Number 7. John Cena and Batista rise to the top. By the time 2005 came around, WWE had lost the likes of Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock. They needed to make new stars, and they needed to do this rather quickly. On SmackDown, WWE decided to basically let the fans decide who was going to be the new face of the show, and they chose John Cena. Cena had been receiving a great reaction over the past 2 years, and it was clear that he was someone that they could build a company around. Over on the Raw side, WWE initially picked Randy Orton, but it was clear that the fans wanted to see Batista in the spotlight. Therefore, at WrestleMania 21, Cena and Batista won the WWE and World titles respectively, and the two became the faces of the company for the foreseeable future. Number 6. Eddie Guerrero wins the big one. Throughout the Ruthless Aggression era, Eddie Guerrero's popularity skyrocketed. Eddie's lying, cheating and stealing gimmick was universally beloved by fans of all ages, and it was clear that WWE fans wanted Eddie to receive a major push. There weren't just fan reactions that prompted a push, however, as all of Eddie's matches and segments were doing extremely well in the ratings, so it would have been a wasted opportunity if WWE just didn't pull the trigger. Fast forward to No Way Out in 2004, and WWE decided to have Eddie beat Brock Lesnar to win the title. Eddie's title win is often cited as one of the greatest moments in wrestling history, and it's without a doubt one of the most satisfying viewing experiences to witness as a fan of the late great Eddie Guerrero. Number 5. The Return of the Dead Man. When The Undertaker was buried alive by Kane and Vince McMahon at the 2003 Survivor Series pay-per-view, fans hoped that a different version of The Undertaker would return when he rose from the dead. Taker had been the American badass character for a number of years, and it unfortunately had gotten stale, so there was a lot of demand from fans to see a change of his character. Fans wanted to see the classic Dead Man return, but ideally with the moveset and athletic presence that the American badass character possessed. WWE didn't just listen to this demand, they went one step further. When Taker returned at WrestleMania 20 to take on Kane, he brought back the classic character and would even be joined by his iconic manager Paul Bearer. It was just a perfect presentation. Number 4. Pulling the trigger on Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan's babyface character truly resonated with WWE fans. Bryan was the lovable underdog who could out-wrestle everyone on the roster, but WWE didn't seem to view Bryan as a main eventer. WWE wanted Bryan to face Sheamus at WrestleMania 30, whilst the world title would be decided in a match between Randy Orton and Royal Rumble winner Batista. Now, speaking of the Royal Rumble, when the WWE failed to make Bryan an entrant in that year's match, fans hijacked the match and even booed popular stars such as Rey Mysterio. When CM Punk walked out of the WWE following the pay-per-view, WWE needed to move around the WrestleMania card. This is when they finally gave in to fan pressure. Bryan would wrestle Triple H in the opening match at WrestleMania 30 and would then move on to the main event to wrestle Randy Orton and Batista, winning the world title in the process. Number 3. Making Stone Cold Steve Austin the guy. WrestleMania 13 featured a match between Bret Hart and Stone Cold. The match is so widely regarded as one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history, but it also represents the changing of the guard in WWE. The match featured a rare double turn as the crowd began to turn on babyface Bret in favor of the villainous Austin. In the months that followed, Austin's popularity gradually increased, as his no-nonsense, take-no-prisoner approach to WWE was unique and fans absolutely loved what they were seeing. Fans wanted as much Austin as they could get, and they wanted him to be the number one guy in the company. When it was revealed that Shawn Michaels would be retiring after WrestleMania 14, they needed a new top star to lead the charge against WCW, and this person would be Austin. Austin would capture the title at WrestleMania 14 and the Attitude Era would be born. Austin would then captain an era which resulted in groundbreaking ratings and attendance records for WWE, and Austin in turn became one of the biggest stars to ever step foot in a WWE ring. Number 2. WrestleMania 35. In terms of giving fans exactly what they wanted, there's no better example than when WWE presented WrestleMania 35. The show kicked off with Seth Rollins capturing the Universal title from Brock Lesnar. WWE fans wanted a babyface world title run from Rollins, and at long last, they were getting it. The WWE title would also change hands as Kofi Kingston finally won the big one. Kofi Mania was one of the strongest WWE stories in recent memory, and he would defeat Daniel Bryan in the best match of the entire show. In the main event, Becky Lynch defeated Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair to win both the Raw and SmackDown Women's titles. These were 3 babyfaces that fans wanted to see pushed to the highest level, and the talents in question were receiving his nod of approval on the grandest stage of them all. And number 1, turning Roman Reigns heel. WWE fans outright rejected WWE's mission to make Roman Reigns the number 1 guy in the company. The audiences didn't necessarily hate Reigns, it was just that his presentation just didn't feel authentic enough, and most of his character work fell completely flat. When Reigns took time away due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it was expected that he would return with the same lackluster babyface character, but amazingly, he didn't. Reigns returned at the 2020 SummerSlam pay-per-view as a heel. Fans have been campaigning for Reigns' heel turn for years, and it finally happened. Reigns would be paired with Paul Heyman, and Reigns would embark on a historic Universal title reign. The heel run has received a universal praise by fans and WWE legends, and it's without a doubt the best work of Reigns' entire career. But there you have it folks, 10 times WWE actually gave fans exactly what they wanted. Be sure to leave your comments down below. I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.